Welcome to DIY Meets WTF, Where's the Facts episode. And today in studio, we have Scott Dickerson. He is running for District 39 of the West Virginia State House of Delegates. And we're going to sit down and just have a little chit chat with him and see what his ideas are and why he is the best man for the position. Welcome, Scott.
Nice to be here. Thank you, Carl. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. So, tell us a little about yourself.
Oh, Lord, that's the worst question in the world.
What made you want to run for state delegate?
That's even simpler. I didn't think that the district had a very good set of choices. I think that I grew up here, born and raised in Kegley. Love Lashmeet, love Matoka, love the outskirts of Princeton, where I grew up, running around acting stupid. And the people here were always full of grace for me and mine. And then I left home for 27 years in the Army, did a lot of tours overseas. And when I came back home at 23 to retire, I wanted to come back home here. And I didn't see that even though the people had changed a lot in terms of what they expected and what they wanted out of their leadership, I didn't see that the leadership had changed very much from my childhood and early teen years. It seemed like too much of more of the same, which kind of depressed me. And then when I saw that Doug Smith was running, I didn't really agree with Doug. I thought he was a transplant. But I was busy building my own house and trying to get settled. I didn't want to fool with it when I was asked to run by some folks from Lashmeet and Spanisburg area. And then 2 years later, Doug has to retire. And I was like, well, maybe somebody good will run. And I wasn't going to put my hat in the ring. And then when Mr. Lush decided to run, I looked him up and folks approached me again about it. I decided to run because I felt like Sam just didn't have the experience necessary to do the kind of job that needed to be done for the area. And that's my basic critique of Sam. I don't think he's a bad person or a bad man necessarily, but I don't also think he has a track record where we can really judge him very effectively. But we certainly know what inexperience and lack of wisdom, judgment, foresight would get us. And I think those are things I bring to the table.
And tell us a little bit about your military history.
Oh, well, I enlisted in 96 as a private, as an armor crewman. I worked on the M1A1, M1A2 SEP tanks. And then while I was doing that, I came down with orders for Korea. And my wife didn't want me to go to Korea. She said, get out of it. so I already had a 4-year degree from Bluefield State. I had intended to become a state trooper, but Gaston capered and cut the seats in the state trooper class. So I enlisted so I could get married. That's why me and Jen got married pretty young. She was 18, I was 20. I think I turned 22. And so as a result of that, I said, well, what could I do to not go to Korea? And General Crocker had offered what we call a hip pocket scholarship for school to get a commission. And so I applied for that, but because I already had a degree, I went to get a master's degree at Radford University. I did that, came back in as a medical service corps officer. I have no idea why, because I had no medical background, but the Army does what it does. I did that for 7 years, ran clinics and hospitals. I saw some of my friends didn't come home. It kind of changed how I looked at things. I started going into the CIA ground branch. My wife didn't want me to do that, so I stopped that. I started looking at selection and assessment, go to special operations, special forces, and ultimately ended up in civil affairs, special operations. I did that for 15 years, from about 2008 until I retired in 2023. Led missions across, had teams in 8 Middle Eastern nations. I worked in the UK, I trained peacekeepers, Afghanistan, obviously, and then we did VSO there, Village Stability Operations. And then I came back and I did a tour at 8th Airborne Corps on their staff. And then I went to the John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Center in school to be a future concept developer for my branch. And then after that, I led the branch for almost 4 years as the director for the Civil Affairs branch for the U.S. Army. And that was that was my last job, and I retired.
Sounds impressive.
Yeah. I guess.
Well, since you said you talked about and you led hospitals, in the military?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So let's get into that then a little bit. Let's talk about the certificate of needs for West Virginia. And let's see what you think about changing the health care. Because I've yet to hear any specifics from your opponent. So I would like to know what your specifics are to help with the healthcare situation and the decline in hospitals, things like that in the state.
When it comes to certificate of need, I think I don't want to get bogged down in details. I just want to tell you the base position that I support. That is that I don't think that a small group of people out of Charleston should make decisions about what happens in Mercer County. And that pretty much means you got to get rid of the certificate of need. Mm-hmm. And so as a result of that, I just think that what it does is it ensures a medical company store version of reality for the people that live and work here. And so what I mean by that is you get usually one dominating healthcare provider because it's approved. They bring in all their subsidiaries, they bring in all of their specialties, and they start to crowd out mom and pop type, supposedly, like independent doctors putting their own shingles out to care for people. It tends to monopolize and basically become the only show in town, slowly but surely. And I think that's just a really bad situation for the state to be in, period, as a whole. I think it's definitely bad for Mercer County and southern West Virginia, and my district in particular. I mean, my dad has to drive a pretty good distance for some of his specialty needs. I don't think the 83-year-olds like my dad should have to do that if it's avoidable. And I think by limiting competition and opportunity, by saying it has to go through a small board, which I understand is 3 people in Charleston, the commission, I think that just guarantees a negative outcome and lack of competition.
What? It's only 3 people?
That's my understanding. I could be wrong.
Oh my God.
One's appointed by the governor. I don't know where the other 2 come from, maybe the legislature, I'm not sure. That's my understanding is that it's
bureaucrats.
Yes.
Pretty much. Unelected bureaucrats.
Well, one's directly accountable to the governor, at least. He can hire and fire the person. I don't even know who it is right now. I did at one time. Last year I looked it all up. But basically I came to the position like, well, I don't like this. So I kind of didn't look into it anymore. I thought this needs to go away. And
isn't that kind of like a death panel? I mean, they decide what you can and can't get. Isn't that kind of what that is?
Well, not really, because they're deciding on like healthcare consortiums and things of that nature. So, who's the number one provider here? Everybody knows who it is. I won't even mention them by name. But that by doing so, effectively that becomes not a sole source provider, but they have more capital, more ability, they can crowd out other services. They can make it, especially when it's hard to get other services or other entities approved. And don't make no mistake about it. I'll use light bulbs, for example. Light bulbs, for years, there was a cartel that essentially met and decided how long light bulbs would last. This was across the globe, it wasn't just America. And so these folks would decide, and that way they could keep the market and have a consistent demand signal for their product. So they engineered the filaments to burn out after a certain amount of time. We all know this now as engineered obsolescence. Well, you can take that model and you can put it on a multitude of different industries in different ways. And what you see with what we're offered is that there's the same element of control, but it's done through a different fashion to make sure that you only have the options that you have. So in other words, you can't get a better light bulb because nobody's making it. Right? So healthcare consortiums, whether it's Brilliant Health, whether it's, I forget the name of the joint, there's WVU, of course, there's also Marshall's version, there's different, North Carolina has a couple, Duke Med. They all kind of know, and they all kind of understand what they're all trying to do. It's not a conspiracy, and there's no need to get all crazy with it, but people have like interest, and all these folks that operate these levels, healthcare CEOs, they understand the business, and while they would love to take market share from Carillion Health, is that going to be in their long-term best interest? Or is a stable environment with stable pricing and stable territories, quote unquote, more attractive to them because of the long-term dependable profits that they can make? And so you have to understand that large business models do not want competition.
Right.
It's uncertainty. Business hates uncertainty. And no one hates uncertainty more than shareholders. because they like to see the dividends coming in.
Right.
And I'm a shareholder. I have a 401k, so I'm a shareholder. Most of us in certain professions do have those, or they have some type of investment for them. 70% of Americans usually have some type of investment. I don't have any like specific, like, I manage stocks. No, I just have basically a 401k. And before that, I had the TSP from the federal government, the Thrift Savings Plan, which is the poor man's version of the same thing. But the end state becomes, though, is that we're left with a lack of choice. And when it comes to healthcare, there's lots of things I'm willing to take lack of choice in. Sure, whatever. You're willing to take the risk of coming in here and doing business, and fine, okay, there should be probably some reward for that, at least short term. But when it comes to healthcare, I want as much of anything I can get for everybody I can. Because I look at it like, I want my grandma to have that. I want my grandpa to have that when they get older. I want my mom to have that. She's passed now. My dad now.
Right.
I want everybody to have that for their family. And so you can't be selfish, or you shouldn't be. You absolutely can be, but you should not be selfish about wanting opportunities for as many people as you can get it for them, and as much as the market will bear.
So what's the solution?
The solution is to abolish it. Get rid of the certificate of need. Get rid of this healthcare commission. Get rid of all these requirements. Now, there might need to be some type of structure set up by the state. I'm not sure there is, but there might be, because you probably don't want the wild, wild west. Because either end of the spectrum is probably bad. But with that said, if there's going to be an entity that has a say, I know that Virginia counties, like Floyd County, there's the Hardys in the county, right? Everything that comes into that county, at least up until the mid 2000s, was controlled by that county commission. So,
oh my God, that's horrible.
Well, I mean, maybe if your county commission is more consequential, you care more about who sits on it.
Right. True.
And so,
true.
I mean,
true.
And think about accountability purposes. If the county commission is directly on the hook for this, then you can hold them accountable. You can get better and better people into those positions, and the county does better. Now, with that said, be very careful of the boards that the commission will appoint.
Oh, yeah.
Because understand what boards are. Boards are a way of diffusing responsibility. And they can serve a very good purpose of getting expertise to come on board for a small amount of time, for little or no money, depending on how you set it up, or sometimes for a lot of money. And they can give the county the benefit of that expertise and the benefit of that counsel and that type of specialized action. Like, I know about this particular thing, we're going to set this up. Data centers will be a good example of this. Maybe you should have a board looking at where data centers should go and how that should be done. But
getting ahead of it, Scott. Getting ahead of it. I'm going to ask you about data centers.
but here's the thing that boards also make more difficult, and that's transparency. And it doesn't have to be that way. Boards can be very transparent, but they make it easy to not be transparent. And so I would argue that they're often transparent by design. No, they lack transparency by design. Excuse me. So so as politicians, which I guess I would become one if I get this job. What I've noticed over my lifetime is politicians love to be able to shirk responsibility and accountability onto somebody else. And they love it whenever those negative factors are not transparent to the public. Because then there's no problems for them to deal with. It's somebody else's problem, and the transparency and the lack thereof can be shifted also onto them as well.
Right.
And then I just glide on to my next re-election campaign. So
because you didn't do it.
Exactly. So
somebody else did it.
In a criminal world, we call that, or maybe in intelligence work, we call that a cutout. Just saying. Not for that kind of stuff. I'm definitely for bringing in talent. I'm definitely for getting people that can do the job maybe better or can keep a closer eye on the ball than maybe the commission can.
So at the state level, would you want to make more accountability for the actual, where the money goes, like the local politicians who are kind of going to these boards and then they have no oversight, so that would you want them to be more accountable, or do you want to wipe boards out and make just the people who are elected that actually get paid to do the job do it?
Well, I mean, there's only so many hours in a day. And so your commission is limited by the manpower that they command, right?
Correct. And in West Virginia, they're technically part-time positions. Correct.
And so, but that's one of the reasons why boards do make sense, right? So I'm not willing to say divorce ourselves from boards entirely, because I do believe they can be used well and effectively. What I'm saying is maybe there should be some ground rules for how boards function, some ground rules for the transparency requirements for those boards, some ground rules for, ultimately, I don't care if there's a board or not, the commission's on the hook for it, they're responsible. So if you're not, if I look like this, in my old job, right, if I was going to bring an officer in to do a job to replace me, right, a lot of times I mean going to the GO that's in charge of this particular effort, the general officer, and saying, hey, sir, Bobby's coming on board. I'm vouching for Bobby. Bobby will do a good job for you. This is why. Because it's one thing for the guy to be assigned there. It's another thing for the GO to have a warm and fuzzy, as we like to call it, about how things are going to go. But if you come in and you put your credibility on the line and you vouch for Bobby, there's no real Bobby, by the way, and you vouch for the guy, then that person knows you're putting your own reputation on the line, and you will suffer, at least with regard to that general officer and his staff, in the future if that doesn't go well. And I think that there should be an element of that with the commission. When they appoint a board, they are vouching for the board and its capabilities and its outputs, and it should directly reflect on them whether or not that comes to fruition or not. If it were me, I would expect that standard. I grew up with that standard my entire military career. You're always accountable. There's never, no excuse was the only acceptable answer for most of my life. And I think that's the same bearing we should expect for our politicians. No excuse.
Well, let's segue that into the property tax thing, since we're talking about county commissions. Because it seems like county commissioners around the state are blaming the state for all the high taxes and all the hikes. I know that locally here in Mercer County, the county commission is saying that the state was putting pressure on them to raise the rates. We asked for the proof to show that was the case, but that's not been produced. So we are...
Well, probably because, let me speak in their defense for a second. Probably because it can't be produced. Let's just say that it can't be. Maybe it could be. Let's say it can't be. Let's say the state is acting like Big Daddy. Big Daddy in this case being Uncle Sam, the U.S. federal government, right?
Yeah.
So how does Uncle Sam get states to go along with things that normally their population would not want them to do? They use coercive measures based on funding, and then the denial of said funding. Medicare's been used this way. A bunch of different other social programs have been used this way to get states to go along with things they otherwise probably would not support. Or they sell it to their public in a way that gets support because they want that money. All our state is doing probably, maybe, is learning from Big Daddy and doing a similar thing with the counties. I think there's probably an element of truth to that. We want things to go a certain way. I'm not going to put that in writing, but you're going to see punishment and you don't get access to certain things. I'm not going to think of you first. I'll think of you last. As long as I think of you, I've met my legal responsibilities. Where in the frame you land, well, that just is the way it happens sometimes. Sorry. So that could be true.
All these raises and taxes, and there's no other services provided. Like the services are still, there's no accountability for any of the services that are here.
Say it ain't so. Carly, how do you know there's no services being provided? Because I'm going to tell you right now, there's a whole lot of people sitting in sub-regional jail. That's a service.
Well, yeah, we're going to get to that too. But okay, so
that's a bill the county has to pay.
It's always a thing about trash and all that stuff. So why can't we have convenience centers around the state? If you're going to start raising taxes, you can do that. You can at least try to help fund more of fire services, EMT services, or something where we can get more services in the rural parts of the area. Things like that the taxes could go to with all these raises. I mean, where are they actually going other than the jail? We know the jail is part of it, a big part of it, which we'll get to that in a minute. But what is to me, it just seems like it's pure theft and illegal for you to be able to lose your home that you owned all your life for $1,000 in taxes.
Well, let me be clear. I support the complete dissolution of both the personal property tax, that's your vehicles, that's the stuff that moves, right? That's your property, and the fixed property, your real property, the dissolution of those taxes as well. I mean, completely. Now, the caveats to that is I don't mean that for business. Now, if I own Conwell, right, my house as the owner of Conwell, even though I'm maybe $1 million company, that house is no longer going to be taxed. My Other properties related to my business, however, whether I run rentals or if I'm just have infrastructure for industry, will still be taxed. This is for the citizenry, not for the businesses. On the flip side of that, for the businesses, because I don't believe in I hate cell phone companies. Hey, new customer, you're gonna get the best deal ever. Existing customer, I don't care about you. Keep paying.
Yep.
Right? I don't like that kind of tax, which is why I also don't like tax incentives for businesses and things. I don't like those on the whole. I'm not saying they don't ever serve purpose. There can be specialized services where they might be applicable, but on the whole, I don't like them at all. But what I do like to get rid of is the business inventory tax.
Oh, yeah. What about, the inventory tax? Yeah.
I think that's criminal as well.
Very.
And so, you pay taxes on it once when you buy it and you get it. And I think that's appropriate, right? I think maybe you can even say, hey, you have to pay your first year property tax because you bought it that year, right? So you're going to pay.
There's only, 4 or 5 states in the nation that still have that tax. It's very antiquated.
But they have other versions. So there's nothing to things get very specific. You change the titles, finagle the name. That's why I say I don't support any type of real property tax for citizens, individuals, especially we could even go further and say okay, we can make a differentiation between homestead versus normal real property. And I'm down with that too. If you want to target like Florida's done and really improve it for seniors, we can do that too. I mean, if I say we can do that, what I mean is if you have to sell this to a large body, like the House and then the Senate, well, then you might need to do carve-outs. You might need to do things to make it more palatable to them, more attractive. I don't like that personally because every special rule you create is an opportunity for that thing to not serve its purpose the way you intended it to. So if you look at I'll give you a perfect example, right? So why is it small businesses have such a hard time in the current business climate? Big businesses don't seem to have the same problems. That's because big businesses, shout out to them because, hey, they employ a lot of good people and they do a lot of good things. But they also have accountants. They also have lawyers. They also have the ability to navigate a complicated tax law world. Correct. Whereas a small business does not have that capability. So what you've done inadvertently or on purpose, I don't know, is you've set up something that's very, it stifles competition, just what we're talking about with healthcare.
Correct.
And therefore it advantages people who are able to navigate a complicated world of taxation and loopholes. Fewer loopholes, fewer stipulations, fewer ways to manipulate the system is what that amounts to. And then you don't need to pay all those lawyers and accountants, so the accountants won't like that. CPA Association won't like that. But maybe the bar won't either. I don't know, or whatever the lawyer associations are, I forget now. But nevertheless, because you'll need fewer of them, right? Because it's a simpler world now. But guess what that does? That makes it easier for small businesses and medium-sized businesses to actually compete. It makes it easy, and you end up employing more people, and probably at a lower level in terms of wages, but also more convenient to them because they don't have to move everywhere, do whatever. You know what I'm saying?
But where's the limit? Because if you tax them to death, then you're not going to have new businesses want to come. So then you in turn don't have more jobs to people, and then it's like a vicious cycle.
Well, no, what I'm saying is by getting rid of the business inventory tax, you actually improve the lot of businesses, and it makes it easier for them to operate and to actually predict year over year what they have to pay.
So for clarification, you weren't saying that you think the businesses should pay higher property taxes. They just should not have tax. They should continue to be taxed at the same rate.
Correct.
But
get rid of their inventory tax.
Right.
That's
and B&O. I don't even know if the state has any jurisdiction over B&O. That's usually city, isn't it?
So there was supposed to be a deal, and I won't speak to this in great detail because I'm not well read enough on it yet. I've done a cursory or a skim kind of read on it. But there was supposed to be a deal, and actually Eric Porterfield actually knows a lot about this because I think he was either in office or associated with it when he was a delegate. Where that was going to go away as a result of some other deal they made for taxation that I forget the details of. But when that went through, they never got rid of the B&O estate. And there wasn't a mechanism in the law or the statute that was, as it was written, to force compliance. And that's the other thing I would say too, is I'm not saying there's not a good reason for this, but why is it that every benefit that we talk about or everything that's done, when someone pays you or this a year over year thing, there's not a thing that says, hey, this rate will be this amount of money, adjusted for inflation every 5 years. Then you never have to do the legislation again.
Right.
You never have to have this fight again. And people don't walk around. I'll use the example because it's personal to me. So both my knees are shot. I blew both of them out, jumped out of airplanes. So my knees don't, like, it's bone on bone, baby. It's just like, it's pure pain, right? Lord. I just had the left one replaced back in January. I'm going to get the right one done this fall, I think. But the point I'm trying to make is they pay you jump pay. In the 1960s, they need people to go airborne. Maybe it was the 50s. But anyway, they need people to go airborne, jump airplanes for a living. So they offered an incentive of $150 a month.
Oh my God.
$150 in 1960s, baby. Now that was some real cash.
$150 a month?
Yeah, to jump airplanes.
Oh my God.
It's still roughly the same amount of money now. It was never adjusted for inflation, right?
Are you serious?
So jump pay is exactly the same. If you were to look at what airborne were paid in the 1960s, when you adjust everything for inflation, you realize that, like, it meant something to risk your life. And by the way, on Fort Bragg alone, about 2 people die every year jump airplanes. You know, we have training deaths, all those things happen. There's real risks associated with that job. And the injuries, don't get me talking about it. I mean, you got my knees, people's backs. I've seen hips shattered. Like, I've seen it all, right? Night jumps are the worst. But yet, we need to have the capability in case we have to do an insertion at night, because way fewer people will die as a result of being able to do that particular act. But nevertheless, it'd be really a lot cooler if that 150 had been adjusted for inflation over the years when Scott was getting that pay in the 2000s.
Right.
Way better for me, right? But it never was. And it used to irritate me. I was like, why? Because it's in public law. That's how much we pay.
Oh my God.
Why couldn't they just run there and adjust for inflation every 5 years, right? You know? So that's just one personal example of how I wish things were thought through, or maybe they are, and they're left that way on purpose. Mm-hmm. But we can do a lot of forethought. We can have foresight with regard to these things and think about how to better position the people. Now, the state is actually put in a hurt box by that way, a hurt locker, because that means that we have to keep paying this. It's going to go up every 5 years, and the state it makes the state budget harder to maintain and manage. It does. So I say that understanding that puts a burden on the state. It does. But hey, I think maybe that will make you think twice before you decide to make these kind of requirements. Mm-hmm. But when you do, you know that you're writing a check to the future for our kids, right?
Right.
And so you're going to take care of them the same way you took care of their parents, mm-hmm. which is kind of how we should be thinking.
So how would you bridge the difference, though, in the amount of, I hate to say it's revenue, because it's not a business, but how would you bridge the difference in the revenue that you would lose by cutting out the property tax for residential and just having it for business? I mean, that would be a significant amount of revenue loss.
Well, Scott, we're king for a day. We don't have kings,
right?
Right? But let's say that I was running West Virginia, and I had a house that was locked in, same party as me, and I was the governor, and they didn't dislike me like apparently they did Morrissey, and I had the power to make change. I would probably chase after it a few different ways, but one of the things I would absolutely do is I would go to a flat income tax. Go to a flat income tax. Everybody pays the same. There'd be no, I don't care if you make $6. I'm being facetious here, of course. Mm-hmm. There'd be a cutoff at the bottom. But if you make a certain amount of money, let's call it $6,000, 25 or $26, adjusted for inflation every 3 years, whatever. You make that amount of money, then you pay 15% or 10%, whatever they decide would be the right rate for income tax. Everybody pays the same. Everybody pays their fair share. It's literally a share based on percentage. So you pay your fair share. There's no get out of jail free card for being this, that, other thing. The only, I guess you'd say, the incentives I might be willing to talk about would be things for family formation. If I wanted to give a break to somebody, it'd be for things like family formation, or maybe.
What about fixed income people?
Well, what do you, to what extent?
Social Security.
Well, I don't think that, I'm not sure why we're taxing that anyway.
I was surprised about that West Virginia taxes that. Most states do not tax that.
So, for two reasons. One is I just don't want to have that fight about taking Nana's money.
Yeah.
Okay? I'm being completely honest there. I'm kind of being funny about it, but I don't want to have that fight. I hate being in trouble with my grandma or my
But
grandpa.
the homestead exemption that they offer through the state is so low. It's only exempted the first 25,000 or 20,000 of the house property value, and after that they have to pay the difference. So when you've got these rates going up, and by the way, another thing I want you to answer is, why are the rates going up? There's no new businesses. We're not even talking about services. I mean, there really isn't any justification. Like, you don't have these major housing developments coming in that's jacking up the price of the land, and no more businesses, new things coming in that are anything any more significant than what it was. So how do you justify going up? And then if that goes up in turn, shouldn't the homestead exemption go up a little bit too? Because now you're valuing a house that was $10,000 last year, just figuratively speaking. Now you're valuing it at $30,000.
Well, so two things I would say to you, right? I have nothing to back this up. I don't have any numbers. I'm not going to even. This is just simple extrapolation and logic. That's all it is, right? So the state decides I'm going to give a $28,000 or whatever homestead exemption. That's awesome. The state doesn't miss that money. The county does.
Yeah.
So I'm going to raise property taxes to account for that $20,000.
Right.
It's just like what the supermarket does.
Correct.
I'm passing that through to the consumer, or in this case, the taxpayer.
But for many, many years, that's been, a lot of people's property values have been low enough to where they didn't have to pay taxes.
Right.
And now all of a sudden it's catching up. I mean, and there's no justification for it. I mean, just be honest. Just say that's what you're doing. I mean, if there are people doing that.
So I would argue there's three like real justifications for it. One of them is the homestead exemption, right? And you may not. That's like fighting with Nana about her money, right? You gave something to people, now you're taking away effectively, right?
Correct.
But there's the other thief in the door that's affecting the county as much as it's affecting us, and that's inflation itself. Make no mistake about the fact that what happened under Biden as a result of COVID and all the payouts and everything that happened, that inflation's real. And while it's stopped growing, the inflation hasn't went away.
Did that all happen under Biden, though?
Oh, no, it didn't. It started under Trump. Right. but
I think both administrations are probably responsible for that part.
But they're not equally responsible. That's where I differ with people. So we make a lot of what I call false equivocations, right? So what Trump underwrote in his first term, if he'd been reelected, he would have had to face the music on.
Correct.
Right? Unfortunately, a negative byproduct of the way that these presidential races went down is that Trump did have to face music for what, and Biden probably in the beginning wasn't going to run again. So he was doing stuff he wasn't going to have to face music on either.
Correct.
And he didn't have to face the music because he became a doddering mess. Right? And so, I'm not trying to be bad toward the man. I have no hate in my heart for him, but I was ashamed of that personally. The whole thing. So Trump didn't have to face music for what he did in his first term, really. That was Biden. But Biden just doubled down on it. And he did it. I'm going to do it twice as fast, twice as hard as Trump. And so now we're in this administration. They can disavow themselves of what happened previous to, and they have every right to do that because they did not make it worse. Biden did. He exacerbated the inflation. The Inflation Reduction Act is Orwellian doublespeak. And if you know anything about Orwell, if you don't, you're listening, I apologize, but he wrote a book where basically what they would do is they put up placards saying obedience is bravery or crap like that, right? So the Inflation Reduction Act,
1983?
84,
okay.
yeah. The book's called 1984. But that's what the IRA was. It was literally labeled that it was going to reduce inflation, and everything in it increased inflation. Just as marketing to get it passed, right? And if you ask me, well, did you read it? No, I didn't read it. They didn't care. So that inflation has been a thief out of our pockets all the time. Except it's also a thief that doesn't come when the crime occurs. The thief doesn't come by. The thief comes by later, and he stays, and he keeps taking and taking and taking and damaging your buying power and your spending power. And we're living with now, probably just now. And this year, next year, we'll see the full effects of that inflationary rise.
Our founding fathers would die right now all over again.
I mean,
the Boston
taxes, man.
All the taxation, they would be dying.
Income tax was originally a temporary measure of 1% or something like that. If I remember my history correctly.
And they had a cow over that.
Yeah.
So it would be bad.
Yeah, and here we are today, right? But now, to get back to that though, income tax is the only tax that's progressive. And when I say progressive, I don't mean that like I'm going to dye my hair purple. What I mean by progressive is it is a tax that by design does not harm you based upon your socioeconomic status. Which is me just trying to use fancy words to say it doesn't hurt the poor more than it hurts the rich. It doesn't hurt the rich more than it hurts the poor. It hurts everybody pretty much kind of equally. I'm really for taxation that is equally damaging. I hate all taxes. I think taxation is theft. But we have set up a system where we do require revenue, as Carla asked me a minute ago. So you can't take yourself off of a drug immediately. You just can't.
I mean, we got to have roads, we got to have bridges. I think everybody understands that. I think it's just the sudden shock of everything else has went up.
Mm-hmm.
But also, really quickly, do you think part of the revenue dip is, what do you think about the government acquiring all this property? Because then once they acquire the property, they pay no taxes.
Well, what's also crazy, just as an aside, you can still claim property out west, by the way. You can still stake a claim to this day.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. The wild West. And they say West Virginia's wild and wonderful.
Well, I mean, it's the Bureau of Land Management. There's a bunch of hoops you got to jump through, but it's still possible to do that.
Oh, wow.
So assets are what allow you to weather bad times, because assets are valuable regardless of what happens. Your savings becomes worthless because of inflation, but your assets still exist. That's why real estate never goes out of style. That's why gold is one of the few things that's considered an asset, although it's also a commodity or product. So the government,
they're acquiring land everywhere around here. I mean, Real Catch that could have been a business that was producing revenue. And I mean, you just said businesses shouldn't be exempt from property taxes. So even if it was completely your way or whatever, now you've got a loss of revenue from that. And that's not a small piece of land. I know a city that did that, but it still was kind of the kind of government concept. Mm-hmm. County has the Gardner Center. I know that was originally a government complex, but government complexes are sold to private individuals all the time through auction. Mm-hmm. So that could have then been turned into office space. That's very convenient on 77. I mean, very good landscape and, for somebody to have, but now there's going to be no revenue generated from it. I mean, it's more or less a liability. I mean, you got to pay power bill and all that stuff, and the people who rent it are they're not paying. They're not paying what normal people pay for things, because a lot of boards. Mm-hmm. We'll go back to the boards that are housed there. So now it's another expense. The county, and so the state buys up properties too, and the state's claim to them, but then that cuts out the revenue, and so. Do you think the state should be acquiring all these properties? Do you think that there should be at least some kind of hoops they got to jump through? A lot more hoops they got to jump through. I mean, how do you think this should take place? Do you think that hurts our revenue more because we're cutting? I mean, basically you're cutting your throat, and then you're trying to tax higher to the people. I mean, because even where the wave pool is in Princeton, that was a private business. It was just, I don't know who owned that before, but someone was paying taxes on that. Mm-hmm. And then now they're not, because it's owned by the city. So then are you cutting your own throat and then going, oh, we want to cut our own throat and we want to do this, but now we're going to pass on these higher prices to everybody else to compensate for that?
Well, I mean, so land purchase by any government entity is always kind of suspect. And what I mean by that is because if you look at your state or your city or your county as a business whose purpose is to improve the lives and the futures of the residents, the citizens, then it should be fairly easy to make a case for purchasing property. Because if I were in the military, I would lay out a plan. And I would say, we're going to do these acquisitions over time. We're going to be able to prove our lethality, our ability to do this, our ability to do this type of mission. I'll be able to better train my troops. I'll be able to do this, this, and this. The fidelity that I would have to do anytime, believe it or not, one of the most responsible entities in the U.S. government for spending money is the United States Army. They're just so freaking big that the waste still is still bad, right? Mm-hmm. But like when I would do budget requests, when I would do the things that I did I had to lay this out very transparently for my chain of command. The rationale, why should the taxpayers' money be spent this way? It's not that hard. Mm-hmm. It's not that hard. But I will say what is difficult about it is that you have so many naysayers and that then become a political liability. Because I'll give you an example, like stuff I did in Afghanistan, right? I go in and I do a project to help out a school, let's just say. It's pretty famous, like general kind of like help out kind of thing that we did over there. But the guy who ran the old school is angry because he's attached to the old regime, the old council. He's probably not going to get the job to run it again, right? Mm-hmm. So we're going to have new people. He's going to be against it. He's going to talk trash about it. He's going to mobilize the population against it. Even though the school's good for the people, we need a new one. Probably better if it wasn't a Taliban school, right? Maybe. He's still going to cause problems because that he is being disenfranchised to a degree. He is being hurt financially and economically to a degree. Or maybe just because he doesn't like the person who's going to be put in charge of it. Maybe they have family history. They have a feud going back a few generations. Who knows, right?
This sounds like West Virginia.
Well, I used the example for a reason, right?
Yeah.
This is the reality of doing anything in a place where people have multiple axes to grind. So sometimes I understand the desire to keep things behind closed doors because you're doing a good thing, right? You don't want folks who have other plots and other reasons that they don't care about the community. They care about what they're mad about. They care about what where getting their bread buttered, right? Mm-hmm. And so they're going to hurt you through this thing that they don't even really care about that much, maybe. But they don't want to see someone else get advantages they don't get, right? Mm-hmm. Just map out any human frailty story from the Bible. It all applies to politics, all applies to these things. But I think that you have to do the hard right over the easy wrong. I think you do have to be transparent. And then I think you have to do something that we don't like to do, which is then call out people for their real motivations. Well, Carla, I know why you're against this because you wanted to run your own show and now you don't get to. I'm going to remember that, Scott. Right? Well, that's fine because you can hate me for it, but civil service should be like, I understand that there are people who are going to be upset with me with decisions I make for the benefit of all. I'm sacrificing portions of my reputation. I'm potentially sacrificing goodwill, like to do the right thing. And so I know that that's why civil service is called service. It's not to get out there so you make more money, mm-hmm. or to be popular, or to have folks like you. You may end up with a large group of people not liking you if you do the right thing. At the end of the day, I've said this my entire military career. My whole focus on this is that when I get up in the morning, I look in the mirror to shave. I don't hate the guy looking back at me. Right. And
I always say you gotta lay your head down at night.
Both work, right?
And you just don't know. I mean, you gotta do what you gotta do to make yourself know that you did the right thing. Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that means doing things that you really would rather not do.
But the thing that kills me, it sounds like the Taliban has the good old boy system too.
Oh, there's nothing new under the sun. Yeah. There is nothing. And God
they just call it something different everywhere you're at.
Oh, what's crazy is they have a thing called Pashtun Wali. I'll get off on this. This is the code of the Pashtun tribe in southern Afghanistan. And one of the things in the code is Badal. Badal stands for blood feud. And like you can literally pay people off. They have blood money with the Vikings called Wetter Guild. Like you have all these capabilities under this code to keep the peace. Mm-hmm. And so we absolutely would follow that code when we dealt with the tribes because that's how you kept the peace. So if you made a mistake or something, somebody got hurt, it didn't matter if it was your fault or not, but like you want to keep things easy, well, okay, you can make a payment. That's where we hear about like condolence payments or salation payments, just like that. And you hear about the news back in the day from Afghanistan. That's what those were. Huh. That's what those were. Anyway, that's total digression. I apologize, but yeah.
Oh, you're fine. Yeah. Well, earlier you said something about businesses don't like competition. Shutting out.
Big businesses don't.
Yeah, big businesses.
Well, any business probably, but especially big businesses.
But yeah, the big businesses, big hospitals, things like that. Let's talk about the big utilities. Let's talk about AEP specifically, and let's talk about how the state could potentially get these rates down, these out of control. Because I'm going to give you an example. This house right here that you're sitting in, last January we were in sub-zero temperatures. Mm-hmm. I mean, we had 80% of our pipes busted in this house last year. when we lost the power from the ice storm.
Right.
I mean, it was the worst cold snap we've had since we moved here in 2014. Because I remember when we moved here in 2014, I was like, where did we move to, Alaska? Because there was literally ice forming on the outside of the windows. And I said, what in the world? So last year, 2025, was the same way. Well, this year wasn't that cold, like as cold as that. It was cold, but not as cold as that. My power bill last year was around $250 for the winter. Same house, same setup. This year it was $900. Where is that coming from? How can we reel that in? Because I'm not the only one who's complaining. I actually had to go on one of those AMP plans, the average monthly payments, and it's $505 a month because it averages the last 12 months, and it started creeping up around October. I mean, it started progressively going up, and I mean, we've got another property. I mean, we don't even use it. So you don't use it, and it went from around $100 in the winter last year, and it was $250 last month and we don't even use it. If you don't use it and you don't have the heat on, I mean, where is this coming from? Is it smart meters? Is it not smart meters? How can the state reel that in?
So we used to have this thing like when we would get folks to come down to ask us questions about certain initiatives we were involved in or whatever. And there's a way for me to explain something to you that cuts through a lot of the BS and like you can get the gist, right? There may be a lot of detail you don't get, right? But you understand the essence, the crux, the center of the argument, or the problem, or the issue, or the thing, right? And then there's a way I can explain it to you that we used to call baffle with BS. I tell you no lies. Everything I say is true, but I maximize the minutia. I take an inordinate amount of time to explain the things that could be explained relatively straightforwardly, and I basically wear you out. You can also set that up as part of a bureaucracy, and go back to the board thing we talked about before, is a cutout, BSC. You can set up structures to do this for you and to help do this. I would argue that AEP going private is probably one of the worst deals we've ever made in terms of outcomes. And the reason for that is that the ratepayer is no longer a real factor in the equation.
Well, we're given so many excuses as to why this happened. I personally called them myself, and they say that, oh, well, even though a rate increase was denied with the Public Service Commission, that they can't regulate how much they have to pay for whether it's gas they're using to power the plants or coal or whatever. They can't guarantee what they're going to have to pay at the market. So the market rate, it dictates what the cost is to purchase that product, and then they pass it on to the customers. So it seems like there should be some kind of oversight of that. Then you have people that tell you, oh, well, because of all the damage to the lines. Yes, we had a lot of damage from Helene in this area of the state. And so, yes, and a lot of the power grid all across the nation is ancient. And, I totally worry about that. But that should have been something that should have been factored in a long time ago. Was that misuse at the top all these years? Why is it all of a sudden now catching up? They should have been maintained and replaced. I mean, if you had you don't buy a house and then wait for 30 years to fix it. I mean, there's things that happen along the way that you have to know you're going to have to fix. You're not going to expect your heat pump or your hot water heater to last the entire 30-year duration. I mean, it's going to go out, your washing machine. So you need to allocate that. And that's part of being responsible business. And I don't understand.
No, that's not right.
That's not right? No. Oh, Lord.
No,
well, tell me what's right.
Your first responsibility is to the shareholder.
So.
What does the shareholder need?
But you said they just went private.
Profit. Well, what I mean is private enterprise. In other words,
okay.
It doesn't matter if it's a corporation. It could be a not have shareholders. It could be privately held and owned by like an entity or a fund. It could be held by a person, right? But what I'm saying to you is that in this particular case, when I say private, what I mean is they're owned by they're now on the private marketplace, right?
Correct.
So and that's driven by shareholders. People can buy shares in AEP, and they're guaranteed a profit, 8% or something like that. I think by the state. On top of that, and so you have. I would argue this is just Scott's, opinion. I don't really have anything good or bad to say about AEP in general, but the model itself, I will critique from my perspective with what I know. Fully transparent, I don't know everything. But you have the state who has a role. You have the PSC who has a role. You have AEP itself that has a role. And then you have PJM, which is the wholesale marketplace that they engage in, that has a role. Every one of these diffuses responsibility. Every single one of these diffuses accountability. Every one of these becomes blame shifting capable as a result of just what you saw talking about with the commission and the state, right? With property taxes, right? Mm-hmm. That's blame shifting, right? So, and of these, one of the things that's never hardly talked about, but is probably maybe the most important, is our engagement with PJM. So that marketplace has requirements in order to operate inside that marketplace without penalties. Now they don't say you can't be in the marketplace, but there's penalties. I don't know how familiar folks are with ESG and different things at BlackRock and different other hedge funds that they put on the companies that they're a part of. They have members of the board, mm-hmm. But PJM has requirements for renewables, and if your portfolio doesn't have the renewables, then you don't make as much money and you don't get used as often. So think about like tiers, right? Tiers of service. And if you're in this tier, you don't get called on as often. You don't sell as much as your energy. You don't get as much money for your energy. There could be different ways the model's set up. I'm not saying I know which way the one this is. I just know what can happen. I know they do have a requirement or a incentive program. The requirement is probably too strong a word. They don't want to use that word. An incentive program for renewables. So if you don't have that in your portfolio, or if your portfolio is primarily coal, which is bad coal, then you are not going to be provided the same incentives. You're not going to be provided the positive side of the ledger. You're going to be on the negative side of the ledger in terms of what you're offered or what you can get. You can't get as good a deal. So even though arguably, I mean, there are people who would probably want to, nitpick with me or sharpshoot me. Coal probably produces the cheapest energy you can get. I mean, you could extrapolate nuclear and maybe say nuclear could be competitive and maybe gas as well. Mm-hmm. But in terms of what we have historically, it generated the cheapest power the nation's pretty much ever seen. Now, that was also mostly as a public utility or a state utility, however you want to term it. But things have changed a lot since then. And to include the aging infrastructure of coal itself, which has been pushed by various levels of the government, by the way. So, like, if you don't want coal, mm-hmm. and West Virginia has coal-fired power plants, you punish West Virginia and you punish the coal industry, that has downstream effects. Infrastructure does not get maintained. I'm pretty sure that the blades inside Glenlyn were stopped. If they do inside that turbine, then they warp. And they got to be replaced. And I don't know what it would cost to replace those now or to fabricate them now. Because when they were fabricated years ago, mm-hmm. the cost to replace them was far more than it would probably cost to build a new facility. But when you do things like that, you allow infrastructure to degrade, and that's a decision where you know what's going to happen if those turbines stop spinning, mm-hmm. right? Now, Glenlyn's in Virginia, which is another wrinkle, right? It's not even our state, but it handled power for a large portion of southern West Virginia at the time. Those transmission lines are still there. Uh-huh. There's just a variety of things that have been that I can look back and I can understand why they happened. When you look at just think back in your mind if you're old enough to remember, and most of us probably on this thing are, to how under Obama how coal was perceived. Coal is what this state has. Mm-hmm. There's 700 years of coal beneath the state of West Virginia at its height of consumption in the 90s. 700 years. Now, well, what about natural gas? Hey, man, I'm all about selling that. I'm all about getting that out of the ground. I'm all about doing that too. But my thing is, like, if you got a lot of something, you have an industry already set up to extract it, mm-hmm. and you have plants that you can update and maintain to run it, and they're relatively economical if you maintain them, why would you fail to do so other than for other reasons, political or otherwise? And the wholesale market that we're engaged in doesn't like they don't like our dirty power. There's this whole movement against that, which penalizes the state. So why are we in that marketplace? I'm not saying that we shouldn't be. I'm saying the justification needs to be made. Because by saying that we're in that marketplace, it's now another justification to be like, well, I have to sell my power to the wholesalers, mm-hmm. and then I have to buy it back from the wholesalers. Why?
I don't know.
Why can't you sell it to your people directly? Why do you have to go through the wholesaler? How is going through the wholesaler positively affecting the ratepayer? I don't care about the ratepayer. It positively affects my shareholders.
Right.
So we need to be honest about what AEP is doing, what it's supposed to do. It is operating as designed. It just doesn't serve the people.
Correct.
And guess what? The shareholders aren't the people of West Virginia. They're not the customer base.
AEP's a huge company.
So the shareholders are, that might be in Timbuktu for all we know, some of them.
Which, before I'm going to ask you what your solution would be, I'm going to throw one more question in there.
Fine.
I was always taught in school that monopolies were illegal in this country.
Sort of.
So how is it that these states and all these places like power companies and stuff can operate a monopoly? We have no choices in a capitalistic society, because America, they tout, is capitalism. Sure. So if you have no choice, then how is that capitalism?
Well, okay, first of all, let's be really specific here, because there's folks out there who like to take a socialism bit. And I will tell you that even crony capitalism is better than socialism. But man, it's really easy to criticize crony capitalism. And that's what you have a lot of in the United States. Mm-hmm. That's what you have a lot of here, in Scott's opinion. Everything I say, disclaimer, caveat, Scott's opinion. And crony capitalism is horrible. And it's pervasive. It's hard to prove. It's hard to negate. What I just described with the different healthcare coalitions, how they set up, how they basically have territories. Look, I mean, cable companies do the same thing. Mm-hmm. Right?
Exactly.
There's no.
I think Starlink is the only one that's broke through, and
correct.
They are spreading like crazy. Wildfire, yes.
That's what capitalism is. Capitalism is Starlink.
Right.
Right. But Starlink is owned by what? A man primarily.
Yeah.
If you look at how Elon Musk has been very careful to be able to control his companies.
Yes.
I'm not saying he doesn't have shareholders. I'm just saying, but he controls his companies.
Right.
He has a vision.
He sold his house to be able to stay at the company. I mean,
there's things I dislike about Elon. There's things I greatly admire about him.
Right.
Right. You know, his predilection for the way he fathers children, don't like it at all. At all. One bit. But, you know, men are not perfect creatures. Women are not perfect creatures. Take the good with the bad. Overall, I'd say net positive in many ways. And how he chooses to pursue his business model with regard to Starlink is, I think, a good example of that. He has a mission, and he tries to do things inside that mission. When you have shareholders, the mission is always profit. You may make long-term decisions, but they're to ensure profitability. They're not to ensure good services. They're not to ensure necessary. It's the minimum amount of services that will be accepted for the least amount of money that I got to spend to do it, so I can maximize my margin. That's what it's for.
Yeah.
And that's why you can't get mad at AP. That's like getting mad at the dog for taking the sausage. Right? Dogs are going to take the sausage, right? Sausage is wonderful.
Christmas story.
Yeah, exactly.
Taking the turkey.
Exactly. They're going to do it, right? You can't. That's what a dog does.
Right.
AP has been designed to act the way that they act, and that's why. And they're acting according to their design. Now, what we can say to the state is that we're not happy with the way the state has set this up, and that has to be changed by statute to a degree. Right, because there's statutes that govern how the state interacts.
Well, they keep saying this, the PSC. If you email any delegate right now or any senator, they go, "Oh well, we aren't allowed to. We can't do anything about it because that's over the PSC. The way the state code is written, the PSC is the only one that can do anything." So then, as a legislator,
by design,
Right.
It's cut out.
Yeah. So it's diffusing the blame onto someone else. So then, as that goes, as a lawmaker, would you try to restructure the PSC, or does that get into like the education system where it's almost impossible?
I think some form of restructuring is necessary, and I think that lines of organization and accountability have to be redrawn. I don't know how familiar the audience is with the Chevron decision, right? The Chevron decision came out of the Supreme Court. It changed, 40, 50 years the way we've been doing business as executive agencies in the U.S. government. Before, the courts deferred to the agency, and what they did in the Federal Registry for Regulations is what stood, unless it was egregious. Chevron said, no, you can only do what the law says. You can't add regulations. The ATF can't decide X, Y, and Z. It's got to abide by the law, and we will not give deference to the agency for interpretation. This is big for the ATF and EPA especially. When you circle that back and we look at like how we write our statutes, right? What you see with the PSC is I'm giving you my authority and my responsibility. They gave both. I mean, to the PSC's credit, I wouldn't have took that job if you didn't give me the authority, right? But the authority the PSC has is still gelded. It's still limited because they're dealing with a for-profit company who can always say no. Okay, you won't let me do a rate hike? Well, I'm going to charge more fees because you can't control my fee structure. That's not in the statute. Similar thing up to where we defer to the PSC in that model, but they are powerless in some ways to stop the bills from going up because AEP has routes to get what they want to and take care of their needs. All of that was by design. Now, it doesn't mean they knew what the design would bear fruit necessarily, although I would argue, how could you not figure we're going to do some version of this? Because there are other models out there. We're not the first one to come with this model. Look at North Carolina. They have a very similar model. I would argue theirs is better than ours because their ratepayers still sucks for them, but not as much as it does for us. But with that point being made, I think that statutory reform is necessary in some way, shape, or form. I don't know how realistic that is or not. I don't have enough data to make an informed judgment with regard to that. That doesn't stop me from saying that the need is there, because the need is there.
Right.
Your bill is illustrative of that. So is mine, for that matter.
I mean, it's crazy.
I won't even tell you what mine is because it's a lot.
Well, how are we going to handle these data centers? And what do you feel about that? Because apparently they're going to take away a lot of energy. Mm-hmm. And they're already proving in other areas to really put a hurting on the water system, which already has bad problems here too. So I want to get your thoughts on data centers and specifically water, that it's going to affect these communities. Because, I mean, you can see, I know your district doesn't cover Wyoming County or Mingo County, but you can see what's going on out there.
Yeah, I'm thankful for that, actually. I'm thankful that, like, the reason why I'm running for District 39 is because these are literally my people. Like, Fridays and Shrewsbury, all these families have been here forever. Like, that's my mom's people, my dad's people, various people's. Like, this is the people that I worry about. Wow. So I'm glad it hasn't come to them yet. Well,
my biggest concern is, how does it not? All these streams,
well,
a diluted portion of it's got to make it here, because all these streams run together.
They do, but this is one of the most water-rich environments in the entire United States.
Right.
And so, while I'm not I would what I call a conservationist. I'm not an environmentalist. And the devil's in the details of the data centers. Data centers can be great. Data centers could be a wonderful opportunity for West Virginia, to a degree.
I just don't. They don't create a bunch of jobs, but I don't see how our world. Everybody says they're against it, but then they want to go crank out Netflix, or they want to get some help on their phone. They're on Facebook. All those run off these data centers. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how people expect them not to be here. And then I feel like it's kind of like a landfill. No one wants the landfill in their backyard, but we got to have one. And so anytime that they're putting in a landfill somewhere, you will see the picket lines. You see all the signs in the yards. They don't want this. It's zoned for landfill. If there's zoning in those areas, they don't want anything. And then now you've got the data centers basically coming in kind of like it's an electronic landfill, I guess. And so does it need to be in a more remote place, Or should we continue to allow them to take over these old manufacturing facilities that are around a bunch of people and communities? Because I don't know if you've looked at the data of them, but some of them use enough electricity that up like an equivalent to a 50,000 community population community. It's crazy of how much they use. And can our grid hold that? Can our grid hold that? Are they just too big? Should we put a limit on the size of them? I mean, how are we going to fix this? And I don't know. I mean, it's also new.
Have you seen the stuff on like what they want to do, like with different micro power generation options?
No, I've seen that they're looking into other ways to do it besides the water system, but until that comes, I mean, we still got to deal with. I mean, the devil's in the details.
The devil's in the detail.
And you still got to figure it out and what you're going to do with it. And these little communities, I mean, I know Matoka here had horrible water.
Yes.
And I don't know how we solve this.
Well, so I would say two things, right? The first one is like you said, you compare it to a landfill. I would argue they're not as bad as a landfill because you can draw a direct line from what data centers enable, right? You kind of mentioned yourself, but they enable a lot more than that. They enable the ability for like, how do you think, to use the healthcare system again as an example, there's a huge call on data centers support for things like healthcare centers, for records, for all of the things that go along with what that requires as well. There's a lot of things that require bandwidth in the state that data centers help to support that we need, right? That are good for the community at large, not just entertainment, but entertainment as well.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And so you can draw that direct line. The challenge may be is, can you say, is this going to improve it or not? I don't know the answer to that question, but there is definitely a benefit to having X, Y, and Z when it comes to data centers. Is it going to benefit this community?
But how does it that's the thing. I mean, I know that benefits as far as the nation as a whole having these things here, and with, I mean, even healthcare and stuff is running off AI, and I mean, everything you do in life is turning to AI. But how does it help? It doesn't create many jobs.
It creates a few, not a lot.
Yeah. And so it actually replaces a lot of jobs. And so sell that to the public, because that's the biggest thing I hear is people want to go, what do you feel about data centers? Absolutely no to data centers. I mean, that is like the big ticket item right now. And so,
see, I don't have that same reaction. I don't say no to anything that can potentially improve the lives of people. But what I'm saying is, how is it going to improve the lives of our people? If it can, I'm for it. But the devil's in the details with everything. Any type of industry that comes in here, it doesn't matter if it's a machine shop or a data center. Who are they going to employ? How many people are going to come from the local area? Are you bringing in your own people? At what level are you bringing over? I mean, you do need to bring in a few, right, for specialized tasks and capabilities. I got that. That happens, right? But you're going to train somebody to replace that guy, right? How? Because that's what could be a requirement too. You get to bring your own people in, sure, but can they train a workforce here, and then that workforce replaces them over time, right? Because a cadre of trainers for big corporations is not a big deal. They do that all the time.
And who's going to be the oversight of this? Because as we see, are we going to have more boards?
Well, you totally could, right? It's all about how you write the remit, right? It's all about how you delineate responsibility, authority, and accountability. You can absolutely write things up in a certain way to where it's transparently known that this board will oversee this. They will report to the county commission, or they'll report to X, or they'll report to the state legislature. The state legislature has a requirement to announce or to publish said findings based upon what the board did with supervision every year, every quarter, whatever, right? You write, that's what devil's in the details. You write these things into the law. They become the requirements. No one wants requirements because they don't want responsibilities.
Right.
Well, the public has to demand those things through their delegates. And I'll just say right now, I'm a person who despises responsibility without authority, and I don't think anybody should have authority without accountability. I will not take responsibility for things that you don't give me the authority to change. That's a devil's bargain, and you're stupid to do it. I did that enough in the military. I'm not doing it when I don't have to. But with that said, I understand that if you're going to give me authority, then there's accountability measures that have to be a part of that, because no one can be unchecked. Everybody has to be checked in some way, even if it's just through information and the people being aware of it. So you could totally use boards for this, but how you set them up wouldn't matter.
Right.
Because everything goes back to, like
There needs to be some independent oversight there because, if you just have the company testing water quality or, anything to do with
there's no better independent assessment board than the people.
Correct.
And I would now for some esoteric, really special or like, highfalutin type things, sure, you might need experts to come in. I got that. But it does not take a rocket scientist to say, hey, you said we would receive X. We received Y. Y was not the deal. It's not hard. If you force them to state what the outcomes are supposed to be within a range, they can absolutely do that, right? Then the public can easily say, just like when I used to build stuff, right? I'm not an engineer, but for a lot of things I used to build, I had engineering tolerances. So I used certain substrates, certain types of rebar reinforcement in order to achieve what, according to the tables that I had for my construction, was within tolerances, right? Mm-hmm. The same thing can be true written in every legislation about like what's acceptable, what's not, how it's going to be evaluated, what the metrics should be. All that stuff can be done. It's just a lot of work. Well-written laws are difficult. Mm-hmm. And the reason why, because I forget who said this, I would have written you a shorter letter if I'd only had the time. So to be
I can help with that.
Well, that's true. Well, and they can help with writing laws too. But being concise and readable while at the same time being impactful and being detailed enough to where it does what it's supposed to do, that's a challenge. We see bills that are poorly written that are extremely long because two things. One, they don't take the time to write them more effectively in plain English. Uh-huh. And then two, because the more I can baffle you with BS, the less accountable I will be. And so the public has to read what happens. The delegates should be required to report back to their constituents what they're doing, why they supported it. There will be nothing that I ever vote for that I will not be able to clearly articulate to anyone who asks why I supported it. We can then argue about whether or not my motivations were good, pure, or whatever, or wise. Absolutely. But you will be able to ask me and I'll be able to tell you. And I don't see me supporting a lot of things, to be quite frank with you, because I don't like riders. I don't like amendments. I don't like deals. Mm-hmm. I like really clean legislation. That's just how it's hard for me to, like someone asked me the other day, and I think I got it from some group, they were asking me, hey, do you support this type of tax reform? I'm like, I support tax reform, but I'm not going to support a tax reform bill if they put a rider on there that says they're going to approve abortion at a certain level. I'm not going to do that. Right. I'm pro-life. So that means I will vote against the thing that I say I'm for. And then what will happen is, in a campaign, then they'll take that and they'll use it against me. Right? But there was a rider on it that made it easier access for, choose the thing that you think is morally reprehensible.
Do you think that more politicians coming out though and just saying why they voted no would help a lot of that?
Yeah.
I mean, they vote no and then they stay quiet. Yeah. It's just like, but if you came out and, I think people would respect that more if you went, I really support this, but y'all need to pay attention to this part. That's why I voted no. I mean,
well, you got to not care about having a job. So another reason why I think it'd be good to elect me is that I don't need this job. I don't want to become a congressman. I'm not looking to become a senator. I'm not looking even to become governor. Mm-hmm. I'm looking to represent District 39. This is where I live. I don't particularly want to have a ton more responsibility than the people I'm going to see on a regular basis. Because I can actually drive to everywhere through a normal course of business day and see the people that I'm supposed to take care of.
Right.
So for me, that's relatively simple and straightforward. I have work I still do for the government, but it's not that strenuous. and I'm retired from the Army. So I can be pretty much at the behest of folks if they need it. If you think your job is going to be a politician and that's going to be your career,
you're in the wrong race.
Well, I would think to the people who are out there voting that would be the best thing that someone could say as long as their positions aren't directly opposed. No, I'm not looking
at term limits.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely term limits. I mean, we can argue about how long, because I think, let's say that that you're in your late 40s and you're retired, you get a business and you retired from your business and you did well and you want to serve the public. Well, if you want to do, let's say you do 2-year terms, right? I think 8 years is long enough.
Oh, yeah.
I think 4 elections is a good time period, less than a decade. But you get some time to know what's going on and maybe make some changes, get you to see some things through, and then go home. Or it starts over. If you really want to keep serving, then run for another thing.
Yeah.
Right? But amass some power over time. But now, it's by the same token, if I were up to District 39 for the next 20 years, I would probably, people like, now that guy doesn't care about anybody except District 39. He takes care of his people and nobody else. I mean, because I think our county's been given the short shrift for a long time. Personally, I think McDowell's in a similar situation. Most of Southern West Virginia can make the same claim. Right. Mercer's made some pretty decent decisions over its life of its being a county that's put it in somewhat better situations because it never had coal like the other counties did. Mm-hmm. The coal ran out in the 60s. They had a wildcatters through here, but they run a lot of Mercer County coal mines. And so as a result, Mercer County had to do different things, which served it well because we've seen what's happened to the rest of the state, right?
Right.
But that's the only reason why. It wasn't because we were smart, I'm not saying anything bad about us, but it's just necessity's the mother of invention, right? Mm-hmm. We needed to do it.
So now let's talk about education a little bit. Okay. Educational system.
Okay.
I'm confused. I don't know how it's set up because it seems like Mercer County is set up different than anybody else. And it seems like some of them are state-run board of educations and some of them are county-run board of educations throughout the state. It's very confusing. Tell me how you would help the school system, education, fund it maybe. This ties back into the property taxes because a lot of people are confused as to why so much go to the educational system and all this excess levy stuff. So give us a rundown on what you think about the state of the education system in West Virginia and what you would improve upon.
Change. Well, I don't think that our functional literacy rate is that much better than it was when I was a kid. Notice I'm being real. I was actually on WHIS and we talked about this. I was less specific in my language. I'm going to be more specific now. Functional literacy, not literacy itself, right? Mm-hmm. And the scales change too. One of the ways that we get around things, we change how we measure stuff. So you can't take literacy tests from the late 80s and you look at literacy tests from the late 90s and then the ones from now and be able to go apples to apples. You can't do that, unfortunately, right? But I would argue that you can approximate enough to know that our functional literacy rate has not greatly improved, if at all, since the 80s. There's a book written, and I asked everybody who listens to this to get this book because you can download it for free as a PDF, although actually buying the print is like $176. It's called The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America. And it was done by the Department of Education.
Oh my God.
It is eye-opening. And I won't go into it here because we could talk about that forever, but it goes back to the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and all kinds of crazy, Dewey, who's famous in the public school system. Goes back to all those jokers, right? It's called
Is that the same Dewey Decimal System type thing, or no?
I want to say yes, but I don't want to lie.
Okay.
I don't remember now. It's been too long since I read it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's just it is replete with examples of why we're where we are today, and that was the 80s, and I would argue it's not really any better. So that's the history of things, and in terms of specificity for us. I am for educational freedom. I am for the dollars follow the student. I am for parents having choices. I understand that the hurt box that puts the public schools and the teachers in to a degree in that system because you're removing revenue essentially with a student.
So you believe in charter schools? Like giving people the option of charter schools?
I'm down with charter. I said educational freedom.
Okay.
I don't care if it's a one-room school.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
homeschool.
Just to put it where it is. All 4 of my children are homeschooled.
Okay.
Homeschooled K through 12. I've got one with a 4.0 in the Dean's List at Liberty University right now, and the second one just started with Louisville State. And she also want to take classes at New River as well. So, I would just argue that now my wife was a teacher. She taught in Texas when we were in the military. She did not enjoy it. She got a degree in counseling. And then she didn't ever use that because she had kids and she decided to stay home, and then she decided to teach them. But she did have some training and background, so that helped out, right? But I'm all for that. I think that education standards do need to be maintained. There should be some methodology by which you say, hey, the kids are getting taught. I think it can be abused. But by and large, I'm for the parents having the ability to make those decisions for their kids.
Awesome. Okay. And let's go to the child welfare reform.
Okay.
Big topic.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, this is it could be a sad topic also.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm pretty well versed in that world. Yes. Mm-hmm. I've worked with a lot of people who are advocates for changing that system. Mm-hmm. I don't even know where to start.
There's a lot of places.
There is. So there is one of the most disturbing things that I recently discovered was that there is not just in child welfare, mm-hmm. but in other avenues and everywhere in the state government. Mm-hmm. There's second chance laws that were passed mm-hmm. and given nonviolent mm-hmm. criminals second chances. And there have been numerous people come to me and actually show me documentation, court orders and everything, all these people. I think we could argue that CPS and even law enforcement and auditors' offices and any place you go in the government is very paperwork intensive. So when you've got parents who are saying, hey, my worker is a forgery felon or mm-hmm. embezzlement felon or something like that, that's a nonviolent crime. How much can we trust these reports? Should the goal always be reunification with the families, and should we have some kind of independent oversight? I mean, it's such a big topic to talk on. And yeah. How do we fix this to restore the trust and faith in the system? Because right now it just seems like there is, when it comes to the children, I mean, children are in a different position than the elderly because there's adult protective services also, but the elderly, a lot of them can speak for themselves. Most of them mm-hmm. can. So you don't hear as much going on with adult protective services as far as things, but you hear of children dying, children who really need to be removed from homes and they are not. Their warning signs are there. Mm-hmm. They just don't do anything. And then you hear of the ones who actually don't need to be taken that are taken, and they end up a ward of the state and the system forever, lives destroyed, families torn apart. And how West Virginia has more children. I have a hard time understanding how Virginia, who's very heavily more populated than West Virginia, mm-hmm. and I could argue has a lot of in the southern parts, has a lot of the same type of drug problems that we would have. Because it's just over the line. So, I mean, a lot of parts of West Virginia are bordering with Virginia and Tennessee and stuff, but they don't have as many numbers as we do. And they say the numbers are going down. They are, but we need a significant reduction rate. And it seems like at the state level, like the cabinet secretary was only there for a year, Alex Mayer, and he was supposed to be bringing in all kinds of new ideas and stuff, and now he's gone. Mm-hmm. He actually left and went to a place where they were giving out grants to do those roundtable discussions on mm-hmm. CPS reform. The company that he set up to handle that and to do that report is the company that he left the state for to go work for.
Say it ain't so.
And now there's another person in there that's
saying that there's not an incestuous relationships between industry and state and federal government officials. Say that's not true.
So how do we fix this? Because it just seems like the buck is always stopping. It doesn't. Where does it stop with? Because if you go to the governor, it doesn't seem like there's anything that's done there. And then they always say, well, there's the ombudsman's office, which basically their hands are tied. They can't do anything. It was written. The office was set up under the Justice Administration. They can take your complaints and stuff, but they really can't do much more. I mean, they can't recommend disciplinary actions. They can't do anything. So what do you do about this? How do you fix this? It's not an overnight thing. I know it's not. So how do you begin to fix it?
Well, the first thing is you cut Fed from state. So where does the Fed roll into the state system?
Title 4E funds.
Right. And then, so what are you beholden to as a result of that funding? Remember, we talked about coercion, mm-hmm. right? What guidelines do you have to follow as a result of taking funding? What How is that situation set up? How are grants administered? How are they granted? To sound, I guess, kind of redundant there. You start with the money. Once you find out how funding and power usually go hand in hand. Once you kind of split that Gordian knot in two, then you can have a better idea about where to start to make change. It may be in a place that may be counterintuitive. The other thing, and I will just say this as a general rule with Scott, right, with me, is that I'm always going to opt for decentralization. I believe that decentralization of schools is better for students. I think decentralization of all power is better for communities. Now, to the workable level, okay? Sometimes it's not workable, but if you can, it should be. And when it comes to CPS, so much, and let's talk about the foster care system, it doesn't matter what it is, so much of how that system works seems to go up into the ether. And you don't really understand what folks are answering to the point where it can be used against you, right? And you won't know, you're not aware, you're not cognizant. And then the local folks, or more local, because it could be, regional as opposed to county, they also can use that against you, right? Any system can be manipulated, and when the stakes are as high as a child, people are going to react emotionally, even if they're normally good, decent people. So I shudder to think what would happen if I were ever to be on the wrong side of a child custody situation with my children. The Bible says you have no idols before God. My kids are the closest thing, at least I think, in my life today that would come to that. I love my kids unreservedly. They are the best thing I've ever done, bar none. And marrying my wife and their mother was probably the best decision I've ever made, bar none. So I can only imagine what happens with some folks who don't have good emotional regulation when it comes to their children. And then they get in situations, or a person who fosters a child who really cares about it. And then they're placed inside this system that is very hard to understand. It's very hard to navigate. And not everyone involved in it is a good faith actor. To circle back to second chances. Second chances, as a Christian, I believe in second chances. You don't get to be a Christian without one. With that said, second chances are something that I give to Carla. Second chances are something I give to Ronnie. Second chances are things that we give to each other as people, as individuals. I'm not sure the institutions should be in the vocation of handing out second chances without some significant oversight. If you're going to hand out a second chance to a person, maybe they shouldn't work in a field where their skills as a criminal would be directly applicable to what they're going to be doing in the future. And if you are convicted of forgery and embezzlement and various paper crimes, maybe you shouldn't be employed in an industry where paper crimes would be easy for you to do. And oh, by the way, you may not want to talk about it, but child trafficking is a real thing. And I don't want to believe it's any kind of problem in my state or my area, but if it is, I want to use a whole bunch of words that God and my wife would get really mad at me for using right now. But the things I want to do to those people,
I've had several lawmakers that have used the same terms.
And so
with child welfare reform, and they say they can't get nothing done though because they're only one person. So how do you? Because you need numbers to change something in the legislature.
You need a bill first.
Yeah.
You need a bill. You need to look at the funding, look at how that has happened. Then you need to write a bill, and then you need to take that bill into committee, and then you need to make sure that the committee doesn't kill it without entertaining it. There needs to be better transparency and accountability of the committees at the House and the Senate as well, in my opinion. That's another thing I don't like. I think you probably share that. But the point being is that then that bill needs to be publicized, not just amongst the House. It needs to be publicized across the state, publicized across all the counties. Hey, this is what we're trying to do with CPS. We're trying to do with child welfare. This is what we're trying to do with child care, foster care. This is how we're trying to look at things. I'll give you an example. Like, this is one of Scott's stupid things, right? I don't understand why we're all about when trying to give daycare to everybody that works. Why don't I just give incentives so that you can take care of, raise your own kids? I know that I'm simple and I'm a simple-minded man, but I swear no one's going to take care of your kid better than you.
Right. Because
they're yours. Whether adopted or natural born, I don't care. Once they're yours, they're yours.
And the amount of money they're paying out for daycare these days, oh my gosh.
I mean, and maybe, like I said, Scott's a simple-minded guy. Maybe I'm wrong to have that position, or maybe there's more nuances to it. But as a baseline position, I just think that there should be a lot more incentives to allow someone to raise their own children than trying to worry about some kind of massive system to set up to pay for someone else to raise your kids so you can work. I just don't get that. It doesn't compute for me. But with all that said, when it comes to second chances, I think that needs to be either relooked and maybe just taken off the books. Because everything for Scott is outcomes. Is the outcome what we wanted? Is it what we needed? Is it good? Is it positive? Is the juice worth the squeeze? Mm-hmm. If it's not, let's just cut it away and go on and do something else. Throwing good money after bad is never smart. And so
it was just a new investigative report out that they had allocated, I think it was over $500,000, don't quote me on all the pricing, for a new system for intake for the kids so that they could better track the progress of a case, spent over $250,000 on it, never even implemented it, and then ceased operations.
Good money after bad by definition.
I mean, and then they decided to go a whole different direction, and no one knows who made that decision or what. And now you have a new secretary.
Man, if I was in charge, I'd be losing my wig over that. I'm telling you right now. If you don't know where $250,000 went, I'd lose my ever-loving
Well, they paid it to the company, but then it was never...
No, I mean...
Yeah.
We didn't get any services for that? Nothing happened because of that? I would lose my mind.
West Virginia Metro News did the commentary on it. TJ Meadows. He did the commentary. Amelia Nicely. She does for West Virginia Watch. And she does a lot of CPS investigations. And she broke that story, and it actually, DHS actually issued a statement on their Facebook page, trying to say this is not right. We did spend this money, but it was because we decided to go a different direction and all of a sudden. So you spent $250,000 of taxpayer funds before you decided to go a different direction. And there's nothing to show for it. You didn't even try it.
Here's what I want to see. I love the fact that she did that investigative reporting, right? But I want more from our journalists. I'll be frank with you.
Oh yeah.
I want more. And when I say more, I don't mean more stories. I mean more in terms of I want better stories. I want to know who. I want you to do the homework and trace it. I want you to tell me who likely made the decision. You can say allegedly. I don't care. Let's talk about it. At least get the personal record denying it, right? Because.
But do you support the governor getting rid of these people? Because it seems like they're just giving chance after chance, chances, chance after chance after chance.
So once again, responsibility without authority is no way to run anything. You got to fire people. You have to be. Politicians don't want to do hard things.
Because we could argue that Alex Mayer was here for a little over a year, and I don't see anything he did. I mean, so that was a year worth of salary that he didn't. I mean, no one even really heard from him until. Unfortunately, that audit come out from the federal government saying that 93% of all the cases were done wrong. I mean, and so that's the only reason why people are even talking right now is because now all of a sudden it seems like everybody in government is going, oh, we might get our funds cut out. So we better talk about this because the federal government has given them deadlines to start getting things back on track.
That's all the beast ever cares about is cutting off the feet.
And so it's just, I mean... That's going to be a hot topic. I mean, because they didn't get hardly anything through. I mean, and then Morrissey vetoed what they did get through. Yep. So, if you win this election, that's going to be front and center because that is a hot topic because these children are dying and you can't have kids dying. They don't have a voice.
I'm going to say something. I care about kids dying. Everybody should, right? But I care even more, believe it or not, with having something that works so kids get put in a good place where they can grow. I mean, Let's save them from dying. That bar's way too low. That bar's way too flipping low. I mean,
I've met so many grandparents who are denied to be able to take care of their children, to be put in foster care. It doesn't make any sense. They should always be able to stay with family.
I agree with that. I mean, I think there should be it would be a fairly easy criteria you think to write a checklist of like why you couldn't, because the way it should be to me is like the owner should be on explaining why you did not place them there, why you not place them with family. And if you can make the checklist work and it says, hey, no, unfortunately this and this is true of them, but now that family has something they can point to, like, well, you said I didn't meet that criteria. Here, actually, I brought you proof I do. Because see, all that's accountability. It's accountability saying, no, listen, you didn't get the kid because of this is why. Okay, I don't like what you said, but I see where you're judging me. I don't agree with that. Well, then bring me proof that don't exist and that's not true, and then we can change. Maybe we can change this outcome. Mm-hmm. That's accountability for both sides. You know where you failed to meet a gate, so you can have the child with you, and they now are on the hook saying, this is how I defend what I've done. It empowers both people. Mm-hmm. Because I should be. I mean, I've always been proud to say, like, it may not be popular, but like I held the standard. This did not work. This is why I did this. It sucked. I hated having to say this. I hated having to fire you. I hated having to discipline you. I hated having to write you up. But anybody who wants to come along after me can look at the paperwork because I recorded what you did and what you didn't do. And this is why you got the evaluation you got. And that's how everything should be. It's not comfortable, but it is what it is.
They get a ton of second chances. All the way up.
What else you got?
Okay, last thing, a big topic is jail system.
Oh, Lord. Say the best for last.
I have someone who likes talking about jails and how, especially Southern Regional, is in. Whew. So we got the jail bills for the county. Mm-hmm. You know, how can we try to start fixing some of that? How can we take some of that strain off to where the counties could have more money, maybe alleviate some of the pressure on raising taxes for the people?
Well, some of that land we own,
yeah,
as a state or as a county or whatever, why don't we build our own alligator Alcatraz? Why don't we build our own Speedway Slammer? For non-violent criminals, especially ones awaiting trial, pre-trial confinement. Mm-hmm. Why not? Don't give me a multi-million-dollar facility either. I don't need that. In Arizona, was it Maricopa County? I think Joe Preo did a tent city. He used combat support hospital tents, drash tents, which are insulated, right, to build basically a tent city in the middle of nowhere, and that's where he ran his jail. And that's where his overflow was. They wore pink jumpsuits because they were the cheapest jumps he could find. I mean, male and female, they both wore pink, right? I mean, he cut every corner he could in cost in terms of, like, you know, what he could get for the cheapest that would still actually serve the purpose, right? Uh-huh. And he ran that jail for years and basically did it very cheaply. Actually, if I remember right, I think the county made money on it. And those people did area beautification. Those people did, you know, what we think of like kind of like chain gang work, but they're not hardened criminals, so they wouldn't be on chain. But that kind of work, which I'm all for, by the way.
Why don't we use more of the people in jail for these things?
Because it became politically unpopular to basically use them as a type of slave labor. They're paid very little for their time, and it was seen as exploitative.
But they still do it in some of the most liberal states.
Well,
I mean, North Carolina still does it. You don't understand what hypocrisy is? Oh yeah.
Oh, that's because we're going to virtue signal. We believe this way, but behind closed doors, we're going to act the other way. No. And if you can't see them stamping out the license plates, they're not on the road, are they? You don't see it happening. You don't see them doing making these uniforms that I'm getting paid for on the back end for, because they're doing it behind closed doors. If I have them out there in the community, actually beautifying the community and making it a beautiful place for people to live in, well, you can see that and you can say, well, should you be working them that hard in the summer? But if they're behind closed doors, I can do whatever I want with them. So that's why you see that level of hypocrisy. I think that there shouldn't be a litter anywhere around us. We have a problem around here. People do public dumping, right? They're doing it since I was a kid, right before I was a kid. But that should not be. No, that should not be. Now, I'm not talking about the law side of it. It also shouldn't be for littering. I mean, we got people that aren't doing anything. They go clean that up. And it's not hard labor. It's not that difficult. It's not that hard. You just pick it up, put it in a bag, put it in the trash, put it in a truck, drive it off. Not that hard to supervise either. But I do really think that the jail problem could be solved by. I think that we should take control of our own future. I did not agree with the regional jail system when it was envisioned. I didn't like it then. Anything that centralizes, it's going to be more efficient. But now I'm paying a bill, $100,000, $250,000. I've heard all kinds of crazy numbers, all of them 6 figures though. Mm-hmm. And I mean, we don't have. No wonder you want to raise my taxes, because the service you're providing is outsourced jail services. So I'm paying for a guy or a gal who wrote bad checks, and for some reason they're in pretrial confinement in the Southern Regional Jail, and I'm paying for their 3 hots and a cot. When I don't even think
say that all the time.
I don't even think that they should be there personally.
Right.
Although I do want them to pay for their crime. I would like to, if they're out there writing hot checks and doing negative things to other people's money.
Well, I think there's a lot of people who sit in that jail for a long time before they ever get transferred to the prison. I mean, it's part of the court system. I know.
Yeah, that's the prosecutor. That's the judges. That's a whole. I would argue that you need to talk to with Judge Wolf. You talk to Judge Cochran.
And I will invite any of them.
And you need to talk to the prosecutors. I mean, David Pfeiffer, Anthony. I don't want to.
Heltzel.
His name. Yeah, thank you very much. Both good guys. I think you should talk to them. Nothing bad to say about any of them, honestly, at this point in time.
Right.
But they are a part of that system, and they should answer for where we're at. I know. I've heard them speak on it in the past, so they have their positions pre-mapped out.
Well, the thing about it is that they're sitting there a long time. If they're in there for, a lot of them do drugs, and a lot of them commit crimes when they're intoxicated on drugs. And if you're sitting in there in jail, you've detoxed. I mean, there ain't no drugs in there. But for the most part, you're not getting your fix every single day.
No, probably not.
You're not supposed to. Why for that fee that they're charging said county for the jail bill, why isn't there services to help these people maybe get out? Because you've got to say at least some of them could get out and be productive people and maybe learn, and maybe if they don't have a GED, offer some classes, offer some services, things like that. So where when they leave there and they're literally kicked out of Southern Regional Jail, because from what I understand, they just literally kick you off the property and that's it. And I mean, you where are you going to end up back at?
Well,
the dope man's house?
Some go to halfway houses, or they call them something different now. But we have one in Mercer County over in Bluefield. I've actually taken guys out of that house. I've used them. They worked for me. They helped build my house.
Recovery Point.
Mm-hmm.
They're a great organization.
I've tried to support that. That's why I say I actually do believe in second chances. I've literally put my own self at risk with guys who had a variety of things going against them, and I've tried to help as much as I can. I've even actually spoken at 2 different trial proceedings for guys that work for me. And both of them are doing well right now with no issues whatsoever. So I mean it when I say I understand the problem, and I would argue that there's probably not enough in terms of good rehabilitation work programs in the state. But I do believe that work is the number one way to rehabilitate someone. When you do something and you accomplish something and you feel as if you actually gained something from it, like your freedom is worth something because you worked through it, I think it's a good thing. And when you're punished and you're made to work, and let's say this is a service member, as a soldier, right? I was punished lots of times, right? And how did I repair my behavior? Through work. They worked me harder. And I think that can be very good if it's done well and done correctly. But also, I think that deprivation is key as well, because you need to be deprived of the drugs, be deprived of the screens, and you need to reflect on your crimes, read, learn about why you're there and what led to that, and how you're accountable for it, and stop giving excuses. Everyone has had hardship in their life, some way more than others. That's true. But at some point, the only person who can change that is you. You have to do that. You have to be accountable for it. And even if there are others to blame, dwelling on that won't get you anywhere.
Right.
Anywhere positive. So even if it's true, got it, Roger. Next. You just have to move on. You just do. It won't help you at all. It will hurt you. I think it was my grandpa. I think it was him. He say that's the road to the devil. Woulda, coulda, shoulda. Blaming other things. If only this had happened, only this person hadn't done that, I'd be so much better off. Well, so what? That didn't happen. So
right.
what are you gonna do now? Mm-hmm. So that's what I would say about that. I just think the jail bill something needs to be done, and I think that on a two-pronged front. One is putting the people in there. Maybe we shouldn't put as many in there. Maybe we should work through our cases faster so the bill goes down. Yeah, but that's not on me. That's on another part of the system. The other thing, though, is I absolutely don't see why we can't talk about having a facility here that's semi-permanent that we can utilize and defray some of those costs, maybe get some benefits for the community.
That would be good. All right, so I'm going to do one lightning round, and then we're going to close up.
Okay.
I've got a few more questions that don't really require a bunch of policy.
Okay.
So, first, do you sit on any boards?
No.
No. Would you sit on any board that is against your beliefs?
No. No.
So you think that board representation actually represents who you personally would be?
Yes.
Okay.
When you're a public figure, especially.
Right.
Maybe there can be some argument for private stuff. Maybe I don't think how about, but public definitely because you're putting.
So you'd never sell on a board Planned Parenthood? No.
No, ma'am.
Okay.
No, ma'am.
Do you believe it? I think Kayla Young is one of the delegates. She is a Democrat delegate, but she introduces about every session that starts. She tries to get the committee meetings recorded so there's public accountability on what gets killed in committee, who killed it, what they discussed, and how it gets to the floor. It never makes it through. It always gets down. Would you be a vote to record committee?
Probably. I don't think that when you say record what goes in, what comes out. I don't think that every conversation the committee has should be recorded. If that makes sense to you.
Do you think their votes aren't even recorded?
Well, no, that's different. That's
Yeah.
completely different. No, I think that definitely should be recorded.
Yeah, so you can see who introduced what and who killed what. There's no accountability for that. Yeah. So I think that should be recorded. To me, that seems like it's behind closed doors, and you should be able to hold your people accountable. Health freedom. Do you believe in letting people choose? I have another organization that's asked me about your vaccination thing. Do you believe in letting people choose?
Let me explain this in two ways. The first way is going to be like, so when COVID happened, right? I took the shots, took the jabs, right? So the way I see my contract with the U.S. government is this. I said that the time period that I signed this contract, I'll do whatever you want me to do, to include losing my life in the pursuit of my duties, right? Taking a jab compared to running a machine gun fire or doing in a mortar Felicity is not, I'm sorry, I'm going to take the jab, okay? Let's be real here. I risk my life for a living. That's what I do. My wife and my kids did not take any of the jabs. They were pressured, and we faced a significant amount of pressure as a result of that in the community where we were. But they didn't do it, and they're very happy they didn't do it now. I wish that I had not done it, but I mean, I don't regret the decision. I wouldn't change it, but at the same time, I wish I hadn't had to make the decision. How about that? Put it that way.
So do you stand by religious exemptions?
Oh, absolutely.
So you vote for religious exemptions?
Yeah.
Would you go as far as philosophical exemptions, like Washington State and those kind of places?
I don't know if I would or not. Because I'll tell you why. This is why I don't know if I would or not. Religious belief requires sacrifice. Philosophical beliefs don't often do that. Socrates notwithstanding. He chose to take the poison and chose to drink the hemlock, right? So that, and to me, that's very much a slippery slope. Because I could even equivocate with regard to religious beliefs, because not all religions are created equal in my mind, personally, right? I'm talking about the big three, essentially, right? But I'm not so sure I could answer that in a blanket fashion. I'd have to have a lot more detail about what we mean by philosophical, conscious objector type language, about how we would define that and how it would be delineated. But I've even seen so far as, like, I remember in the Army, guys want to have beards. They go claim to be, follow the Norse religion so they can have a beard. Like, I've seen people manipulate religious stuff, exemptions, in order for petty, stupid things, right? And I just don't think that we should be vulnerable to that. But in general, I think you intended, I do support religious exemptions, and I wouldn't be against philosophical exemptions in some cases, but we'd have to nail it down pretty hard.
Okay. And last, conflicts of interest. Do you think that we should have some kind of at least a blanket thing in the state about conflicts of interest?
Mm-hmm.
Like to where, as a delegate, you couldn't go and hire your wife to be a cabinet secretary or appoint your daughter to be a justice or something like that, or any of the things that could be considered conflicts. Do you think you should just be this? Do you think?
Let me play devil's advocate, because I thought about this, right? Mm-hmm. So like, I hate to drive. I do a lot of windshield time. I don't like it, and I've done a lot. That's why I don't like it. Let's say I wanted to use campaign funds to pay my daughter to drive me somewhere, to do something like that, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that I'm even comfortable with that myself, but I wonder if that's allowable or if it should be, and if it is, how is it, right? But I personally probably wouldn't be mad at somebody if they did that. I mean, I'm just saying that as Scott as a person, right? Mm-hmm. I think about Eric Porterfield, who's running for Senate 6. He's blind, right? He's got to hire somebody to drive him. Mm-hmm. If he hired his wife to drive him, I mean, she's got to drive him, right? She's taking time out of her day, or say his daughter was old enough, or whoever, right, or his cousin, or whatever, mm-hmm. what have you, right? I wouldn't really be against that. Now, if the bill was like, we pay $1,000 trip, I think that's pretty raw, right? Yeah, but I mean, normal, like, was it 52 cents a mile or something like that, depending on what the mileage rate is? I think that'd be totally cool. I think it'd be fine. But I think that but those things would be pretty easy to carve out and be like, oh, this is okay, and then everything else is not. And I think that most things where you're dealing with your family, your wife, like, so you won't see my kids, and I'm not speaking ill of anybody else. You won't see my kids on my Facebook for election page. You won't see my wife on there, right? Their privacy is theirs. I kind of take the Charlie Kirk kind of thing, but I speak about my kids. I don't want my kids being in the public eye unless they want to be in the public eye. Mm-hmm. If they want to be in the public eye, then they can choose that for themselves. I'm not going to use them how Scott sees it as a pawn piece on the board of look how cool I am or look how relatable I am. That makes me feel like a user, mm-hmm. and not saying anybody else, not judging anybody else, not saying, but that's how it makes me feel inside. Like I'd be using them, and I don't want to use them as props. So I kind of feel that way about pretty strong about all the other stuff too. Like, why would you be having your family involved in this endeavor? Because it is at times a mudslinging endeavor. Why would you want them potentially vulnerable having the mud slung on them? So, like, let's say if I did want to hire my daughter to drive me to Charleston because I could work on stuff while she drove me, that might be cool. But now I'm opening my daughter up to criticism. Mm-hmm. She's part of an investigation. Is the juice worth the squeeze? Right. I'm not so sure that for Scott, the juice, even if it was allowable, would be worth the squeeze. Because I don't want my kids really being associated with this in a way that would hurt them. Right. You know, I asked all of them for permission before I did this. And it was a long process to think about. They don't want to share me. They shared me for 27 years with the U.S. Army. But they eventually like, okay, Dad, go ahead. So that's kind of that's how kind of I see the conflict eventually. I think you should be above board, and it should be like if Grace was driving me, it'd be like, okay, everybody, Grace drives me to Charleston. Yeah. If you got a problem with it, lodge your complaint here. Maybe we'll make a law about that later. But, that's what I'm doing. If enough people don't like it, I'll probably quit. You know what I'm saying? Right. That's how because I would feel very insecure about it, I guess is the only word I can think of to use. I would feel insecure about that if I didn't make it like, this is what I do. Hope it's okay. Hope you're not mad about it. Maybe I'll change if you are. Yeah. So anything else you want to add to tell us, sir? I want to thank you for the time. Thank you for taking the time to sit down with me. I really do appreciate that. The only other thing I guess I would say is that when it comes to making a decision about who you're going to vote for, all I would say is that is vote what you believe will best serve you. Do what you think is best. If you don't vote for me, I won't hold it against you. I'll treat you just like I would anybody else. You can tell me, or not tell me as you like. But I really believe that I'm probably in this case, your best option. And I'm a loyal person. I don't like saying it because it sounds kind of like, I don't know, like you're trying to bill yourself or something. But at the end of the day, what my mom taught me the most was loyalty to the people. You dance with who brings you.
Right.
I'm not going to use District 39 to do something else.
Mm-hmm.
I can say that unequivocally without reservation.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do for District 39, and that's it. That's all it's going to be. So that's all I got to say.
Well, thank you so much for coming in and talking to us.
Yes, ma'am.
And getting that. And this is Scott Dickerson running for District 39 of West Virginia State House of Delegates. And good luck to you in the primary, May 12th.
Yeah. Early voting is starting already, so
yeah,
get after it.
It started the other day, I think.
29th.
Yeah.
My wife went and voted today. I don't know if she voted for me or not. I hope so.